This is No Slides Attached. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Fede Pacheco, along with my co-host and teammate, Helene Cohen. Today, we're continuing our industry series. We kicked it off with financial services. We did an episode on education, and now we go to healthcare. So if you haven't checked those previous episodes, we recommend you subscribe so you check them out and you keep on subscribing to see this one and all the future episodes as we go along the industry. In case you missed it, we're just going to cover all of them, showcasing our partner stories, what really makes them thrive, how do they see the perspectives of what generative AI is going to bring to the table in those industries. And then we're going to dissect it a little bit after with some Microsoft leaders and experts. So, Helene, what do we have today?
Yeah, thanks, Fede. Today, we're covering, like you said, healthcare and life sciences. We already witnessed incredible innovation in this space. And you also might recall the wonderful conversation we had with Jared Mermi from Gig XR and how they were innovating and how they train healthcare professionals. Today, we're going to be bringing a complementary perspective from an award-winning services partner to dive deeper into that topic. After that, we're going to break down our conversation with a Microsoft healthcare leader from our go-to-market team, and we'll talk all about the industry lens.
That's exciting because today we have 3Cloud. They are an innovating partner across many of our platforms, data, applications, the cloud in general. They're really on a dynasty run, I might say it, since we do this sport metaphor quite often, because last year they won Partner of the Year. Then this year they won Partner of the Year for Data and AI again. Plus, they were Partner of the Year for Healthcare. So who best to tell us their perspectives on the industry, right? And we're thrilled to have them to share those ideas, what they do that's going so well. Helene, who from 3Cloud is joining us?
So today from 3Cloud, joining us from Tampa, Florida, we have Dan Rodriguez. He's a dynamic and accomplished go-to-market strategist and entrepreneur with a passion for driving growth and profitability for consulting services firms. As a chief marketing officer at 3Cloud, Dan is focused on key strategies to support acquisition and retention of clients on their journey to become an AI-enabled enterprise. So Dan, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thanks, Elaine. Thanks, Fede.
Yeah,
it's great to be here.
We're excited to have you. And to get us started, and we've asked everybody this question, can you tell us what your favorite go-to Copilot prompt is?
Yes. So I have an easy one. I do teach me like a 10-year-old a lot. And most people like to do this to learn things, which I think is fantastic. I actually do it to help myself communicate and translate to clients complicated scenarios. We are often in conversations that are very complicated, especially as we're talking about AI. And so I find it very useful to use Copilot to help me really simplify the key points so that everybody can understand, because that's more important than actually getting the details. It's about understanding the broad concepts. And so I love Teach Me Like a 10-year-old.
It's funny that you say that, because we did have another one of our partners that said they used it actually to communicate difficult subjects to their child. So they actually use it in the same manner, but using it with their kids. So very similar. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
That's awesome. I didn't know 10-year-olds were in your market segment. I'm just kidding.
Yes.
But you know what they say. If you can't explain it in simple terms, like if you were explaining it to a 10-year-old, then you really don't understand the subject at hand. So that's genius. Again, I spoke about your accolades, right? In your data and AI practice, you have a data and AI playbook, and even better, you have what's called a modern data platform for healthcare solutions toolkit. So tell us a bit about that story that won you Partner of the Year, and why are you believers in this industry in particular?
Absolutely love the industry. So as a services firm, we love to go where there's a lot of challenge. We love to go where it's really hard. That's when consultants and companies really are best suited to partner together. So when you think about healthcare, you have such huge challenges today. You have scalability. They have data that they never get to expire, because we can learn from blood samples from the 40s and compare them to blood samples today. Every single transaction, every medicine, every prescription, every claim, tons and tons of data across a broad array of systems. So you have those are just the basic challenges. Then you're regulated. So now you have all the security and compliance challenges, and you have all these folks that you have to share your information with. So interoperability is a big topic. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to make the actual development of the data platform not be the big hurdle that we had to get over. We knew that governance, ownership, communication, insights, those were going to be the things where we wanted to lean in. So we really took our 20, 25 years of building data and AI solutions, and we automated as much of that as possible using things like metadata ingestion and different techniques so that we could focus with the clients on actually the solutions and the outcomes they wanted to drive rather than all the data challenges that we needed. So at Community Health Network, as an example, that was one of the clients that we talked through for the Partner of the Year submission. And I love the story because it's very simple and it's very straightforward, but super powerful. So as you can imagine, with data platforms in the last 20 years, for agencies like or industries like healthcare, they didn't have the skills and the ability to build data platforms. And so many of them outsourced that to other software as a service providers or ISVs or other individual entities that were going to capture that data and help them to create analytics. Super powerful 20 years ago when they needed to get off the ground and use the data appropriately. Now, fast forward to today, and as we're thinking about AI, the ability or the need for them to have access to that information directly, to be able to control that and leverage it and share it throughout their organization is critical. It's impossible to be good at AI if you're not good at data. And so at Community Health Network, they were spending large sums of money to outsource to third parties basic data platform, data matching, and other capabilities. And so with the power of Azure and our healthcare solutions toolkit, we were able to bring them into their own data platform. So not only are they saving millions of dollars a year, they're actually able to leverage it for AI, for advanced analytics. And by going through this exercise, they've really understood the data, which means now they're more aware of what they need to do and what they need to change within the business to actually get the outcomes that they want to. So huge cost savings, put governance in place, which is really powerful for data literacy and understanding what we're doing, and gave them ownership and power. So as they're looking to become an AI-enabled enterprise, they now have that ability in-house. So really cool partnership and really amazing outcomes by just leveraging the power of what's in Azure.
Thanks for sharing that, Dan. I know you mentioned, prescriptions, but in general, what have you seen as the impact to the healthcare industry so far? Like, what have you seen that's been like a super impressive milestone or a really big area of growth?
So there's quite a few. Again, we talked about scalability challenges, interoperability, the desire for enhanced analytics, and some of the security and compliance challenges. The outcomes that we're super excited about. So some of the basics like image recognition has created all new abilities around enhanced diagnostics. So the ability to take an image and look at a wound or look at other pieces to really understand and diagnose, super incredible. Those are some of the more fun and interesting that everyone can get excited about leveraging. Personalizing treatments is a huge uptick today, and I think is going to be an exciting opportunity in the future to improve. But if you think about all the information we know, and if you think about how many times you've been to the doctor to get a prescription and gone home, it didn't work, and you went back and they're like, try this one now. And you go and you try another one, and you go. Like that whole process of going back to the doctors or readmissions, even if you're in a hospital, a lot of that we feel like can be avoided through the leverage of data and AI. We feel like we can improve in those situations and ultimately, in the smallest impact, have a better patient outcome, but in the largest impact, save lives and prevent adverse reactions. So that's super cool. Obviously, in the pharma space, drug discovery, development, decreasing time to development. There's a lot of really cool things that are happening in the pharma space so we can get meds out faster as new things arise. We have robotic surgery now. Obviously, telemedicine through the pandemic became very popular, which is all funneled by data and supported through AI. And then the basics, billings, scheduling, claims, and those span over into many other industries like insurance and some of the ancillary industries. But it really is impacting from soup to nuts, the majority of the healthcare industry. And I think that's why there's so much hype. And if you look at industry analysis, healthcare is always listed as the number one industry where AI is going to make an impact in the next 5 years.
That's exciting. And we want to ask you about your perspectives in the future too. But before, you've touched upon security a bunch of times. Yesterday, I was having a conversation with another partner, and they mentioned that some of their customers were like, oh, all this is really exciting, but we just don't feel comfortable going forward with this because of, how is the data going to be managed? Even though many things, where like they could do. So what is your perspective? If I were to think of one industry also that is super critical to nail down, is this one. So what is your perspective, and what have you done about security to make sure your customers feel good with how their data and everything is being handled?
Yeah, absolutely. I think security is it's top of mind for everyone, as you pointed out. It is a very common conversation, and security is a broad umbrella of many different things. There's compliance, there's HIPAA, there's access control. Obviously, there's preventing cybersecurity attacks and bad actors. But there's also things that are falling into security now around ethics. What should we use? What shouldn't we use? And how do we trust it? And how do we ensure that the insights we're capturing are being secured and given to the right audiences in the right context? What I would say is 10 years ago, 5 years ago, security was a separate project. It was something that was done maybe at the infrastructure layer, and then something you would revisit before you went to production or before you really launched it. Where we've evolved is now we talk about secure by design. And security is something that's available and a part of every conversation and a consideration for every phase and every activity throughout the entire process. So rather than focusing on a separate security solution or a separate security conversation, we've really tried to embed it in everything we do. Have it in the first conversation, the second conversation, and so forth, because it's not only a conversation you should have with CSOs and CTOs, it's a conversation that the business users and everyone need to be comfortable in because it's just the world we live in today. And so I think for us, securing by design and ensuring that all the aspects of security, from compliance to bad actors, the whole gamut, that we're protecting and including that in every design and in every implementation. And I think that's where the future's going. Security will just be inclusion, an included topic.
And I love that you're pointing secure by design. You're very well aware of that. It's one of our 3 principles as part of our new Secure Future initiative. And I personally believe it's the most important because you cannot isolate it from everything, like you were saying. It's got to be, if you're going to really be that growth and innovative partner for your customer, then that means you got to take care of it as much as you got to take care of the exciting, innovative stuff we were talking about.
Right. Yeah, when we talked about the ecosystem before, being everyone has ecosystems, most industries do, but in healthcare, obviously, with so many entities involved in a treatment plan, just as an example, it becomes even more important. And so now we're having security conversations in our vendor relationships. It's becoming a part of our contractual agreements, and that's why many healthcare entities are trying to bring things in-house because you can only control what you control. And so it is putting more emphasis, and that's why there's more policies, more compliance regulations that are coming about to make sure that everyone is securing by design.
Yeah, that's so important. And I love hearing more and more partners talk about building that into the beginning of those conversations. So we talked a little bit about what you've seen, occur so far, but the potential for generative AI in healthcare is estimated to reach $1 trillion in unrealized improvement potential. So what is something that AI hasn't solved for in the healthcare industry yet, but you're really hoping it does in the future, or something maybe you can give us a sneak peek into that you're already seeing?
We're doing a pilot around this, and we're just on the edge of talking about this. But I get really excited about this because it feels Hollywood-like. But the genomic research is so interesting right now, and there's all these biomarkers in everyone's DNA. And what's fascinating to me and where I hope to see AI get to is that when somebody comes in, think about the forms you fill out of all the things you've had in your life and all your history, and you're trying to remember, did my grandmother have something? You're putting all this down. What if we could capture all of that information and more just by looking at your DNA? What if we could assess and prescribe what type of medicine is actually going to have the best impact? What type of radiation or what type of chemo, what type of therapy is actually going to work for you the best by just looking at the patterns and the biomarkers in your DNA? It could go for treatment plans. It could go for proactive plans to help folks, proactively prevent themselves, or preventative care. And as we get into value-based care, which is becoming really important, there's just such an awesome opportunity to take more data than we ever thought would be possible to consume and process, and actually leverage that to get much more proactive and understanding how individuals' bodies will respond to different treatments. And I think we're just scratching the surface there. But it gets me really excited to think about if you could just take DNA and prescribe for me medicine that's going to have the most positive impact and the least side effects. And so I do think it's a little aspirational, but I mean, think of where we were 5 years ago, but we're getting close.
Yeah, no, that's such a positive note that connects to what you were saying earlier about, not having to redo and go back to the doctor and figure out how to treat someone, making the lives better. We're super grateful to have a partner like 3Cloud and what you're helping so many organizations and people achieve. You definitely inspired more than a few people that are listening right now. So we have to ask you for them, if they are as excited about innovating in the healthcare industry, what would be your advice for those peers?
I think right now it's interesting because obviously we're not the only ones that are excited about healthcare, and there's a lot of innovation going on. And so you have two distinct activities happening within the space. One, the healthcare providers, the payers, they're really trying to consolidate platforms, information, so that they can leverage all of this data appropriately. But at the same time, you have an influx of new solutions and new capabilities. So I think if I was to make a recommendation for folks, it would be don't go in alone. There's so many great providers or solutions out there who don't cover the whole gamut, who maybe already capture all the information that you would need for your idea. And so thinking about ways that you can be add-ons to existing solutions or to existing areas is more accretive for the buyer in the healthcare space, because they're not looking then to have to implement and integrate and broaden their ecosystem. They're really looking to capitalize on the existing things they have and get more value out of them. So I love the Better Together story for anyone who's looking to innovate. And the larger solutions out there love it. They love talking to other vendors, bringing in other capabilities, enhancing their existing solution. It might be a way to be an entrepreneur, maybe create a business that gets acquired or included into another solution, or it may be an awesome go-to-market play where you're really partnering with one of the large providers that are already in the industry. But I think that's the biggest challenge right now, is getting a voice and getting visibility in a sea of solutions that are trying to really support the many challenges in healthcare.
That's wonderful. And I think it connects really well with previous conversations that we've had about this industry where, when you talk about an organization like a hospital, for instance, how they make the organization, how they make the decision as a whole, and they're not, it's not like, oh, I really persuade the doctor that this is going to be great, but then you got to go through finance and all the other stakeholders. So, that integration perspective, not only from your end as a seller, but also how your buyer or applicant of the technology goes. So really thank you, because that's very specific advice, but it's one that's going to become very tactical for the listener.
I'm going to also just say, as you were talking, I've been through some of those scenarios that you were talking about. And, you always hear from people in the healthcare industry, you have to advocate for yourself. And in some respects, what you're building is an advocate for patients, right? Because a lot of times these doctors and healthcare professionals don't have that data available. So yeah, thank you for all you're doing. It's definitely hits home for me, for sure, as I'm sure it will for many of our listeners.
Yeah, Elaine, it's a fun anecdotal story is we have a small medical center that has been storing data since the 1940s. They've actually bought and built underground bunkers to store all the paperwork of everything that they've captured. And they've been taking blood samples since the 1940s. And they've started processing all of those blood samples and looking at the DNA and the genomic patterns in there. And they're about 10% through it. They have the same size server farm as 23andMe, and they're just a small medical center. But when they're done getting through this, they will have the largest set of data to look at over the last 80 years in existence. And they're just a local medical center in the Northeast. So to your point, there's so many opportunities for folks to come in and scan all this data, get it all into a consumable way to drive more value to ultimately save lives. And I think that's what's so exciting about this space is it's not just about profits. It's not just about market share. You're literally making an impact in people's lives. And so I do think people are excited to get in and help. And there are some great opportunities.
Dan, thank you so much for joining us today, making your time to share and inspire others. And for our listener, stay tuned because now we're going to analyze all this conversation with a Microsoft leader and give you some resources that you can take to start or enhance your industry practice in healthcare.
That's right, Fede. Let's move on now to the no slides attached post-game show.
Bum, bum, bum. We need a better post-game show theme song, Helene, but that's okay.
I think
we'll
we do. Maybe our listeners can help us with that. Give us some ideas. So let's get started. We're super excited to welcome AJ Nolte. He's a director of partner marketing focused specifically on the healthcare and life sciences industry. And he's also joining us from Florida.
But from Miami, right, AJ?
Yes, correct. I'm down in Miami, Florida, with the hot and the humidity.
Have you run into Messi yet?
Not yet. I've watched a game. I was over the crowd in the stadium, but I haven't crossed him on the lights, on the street, or on a public supermarket. Yeah. My kids are wanting to, but no, we live in a different area.
Yeah. Well, like we're the second Argentinian that lives in Florida that we have in this podcast, coincidentally. And we should just say, hey, we had the Argentinian that moved to Florida. So people think we had Messi in the podcast.
but I have the supporter jersey, not this one, but I do have the Messi's one.
Maybe we record from your back and it just says Messi and people won't know it's not him.
Yeah, absolutely.
But AJ, you just saw the conversation with 3Cloud and the amazing insights that they provided. What do you think of it? It was very interesting listening to Dan's point of view. He mentioned so many of the critical big challenges the healthcare industry is facing by the adoption of technology. So we are at the edge of a massive transformation. You've learned that from this Partner of the Year awarded partner. So his point of view is super valuable. To connect from what he mentioned, last week I learned from this article that 90% of all the data available worldwide has been collected or stored over the last 2 years. Wow.
So 90% only in 2 years. This means that the data processing and storage and speed is increasing at a tremendous level. But we're only using 5% of that data. So there's a huge opportunity with AI and generative models these days to drive efficiencies, to leverage that information. And as an example, in healthcare, there is, are you familiar with the real world evidence?
Tell us more.
Well, real world evidence, to make it simple, is used to be a collection of people reaction to different treatments and prescriptions. The real world evidence has been collected year over year into offline silo storage compartments by the physicians. And now they can go to the cloud. You can ask in real time if, for example, a male in his 40s with a specific condition, what would be the side effects or adverse effects by taking two different medications to treat two different conditions. And this is a simple example, but imagine how fast can a physician can treat a patient and how less painful can be the process for a patient to be on a better treatment on time and getting back to productivity and their normal life. So one of all the key topics that was discussed was about data and also how AI is processing all that data and make our life easier or healthier.
There hasn't been an episode so far in this industry series where we haven't talked about the large volume of data that we have. There none. Like everybody's like so much data, so much opportunity. So I'm glad we continued that trend today.
Yeah. And, when we did talk to 3Cloud, of course, data was a big part of the conversation. But we also know that, there's all types of different pieces in the value chain. We have providers, payers, pharma, med tech. What other areas, are you seeing advancement in this particular space?
Yes. We are seeing amazing and game changer opportunities across all these verticals you mentioned. To give you some examples from the providers, enhancing patient engagement and operational efficiency is key. For payers, they can leverage technology to streamline core functions and integrate more closely with providers. As you know, we are developing solutions to improve patient and provider interactions and automate workflows. Microsoft is partnering with organizations like 3Clouds with new digital platforms. In pharma, for example, advancements in clinical research, the recollection of this real-world evidence that I mentioned before, especially in genomics and biomedical research, those are crucial. Finally, my personal favorite, the medical devices or the med tech. This is a vertical that will need to be focused on operational improvements and innovate and be agile on the use of technology to reshape more accurate diagnosis and better treatment. I have an example here. This is a device. I'm a fan of technology and healthcare. This device, I blow in, and with my breath, it can tell if I am burning fat, I am burning carbs. It tracks, it helps me connect it to my phone to track what I eat. It makes pattern and recommendation on how can I keep my energy levels by taking the right amount of food at the right time of the day.
Wow.
Based if I also connect it, I don't have my watch. Actually, I do have my watch here. So I connect this with my watch and I track when I play tennis or I work out. And by blowing this a couple of times a day, I get data and I make myself, more energized, more healthy, and more productive. So for the medtech is amazing. And this is only one example. And I think I just mentioned 3 different devices with cross solutions. And that's another of the topics that were shared with 3Clouds about integration with platforms. That's one of the big challenges.
And for those who are only listening and not seeing on our YouTube channel, AJ was holding a pen-sized device. Like it's really nothing huge, something you can carry in your pocket. And of course, he connects it to his smartphone, to his smartwatch. So that is the integration that we strive for. And ultimately, well, in this case, you are the user here, AJ, but this connects to the next question that we had for you, because ultimately, and this was mentioned thoroughly by Dan too from 3Cloud, is we're here for the patient, right? Everybody surrounds making the patient's lives better. They're live longer and more healthy, of course, saving lives. So through all of those goals surrounding quality of life and quantity of life, what have you seen in this space in general? Something that really gives you that spark of hope and optimism that we're only trending in the right direction?
So one of the main reasons why I chose to specialize on the healthcare industry and combined with my eager to learn more, and I am a fan of technology. So those combinations captured my attention as a marketer several years ago. And this is how can technology is able to improve people's life quality and even save lives, as you mentioned. I think patient-centric and the outcomes for the patient are the most important things that we should be considering. And patient in the middle of all this should be what all these companies in this ecosystem should be focusing. Let me give you another example, and I really love these use cases or real stories. 10 years ago, if you have a problem with your eye, you probably need to get an appointment with an ophthalmologist to check on your eye. He puts you on this big machine under a big or strong flashlight pointing into your iris and puts you into this uncomfortable device. I'm not sure if you have ever been into one of those, but and they will scan your retina and try to figure out, and based on the experience of the physician, try to figure out how you are gonna get healed with treatment. We'll probably get a patch in your eye so your eye can rest and heal. But nowadays, with the phone camera, you can take a picture of your eye, upload it into an app. This app can cross with multiple MRI images from eyes with different diseases like retina, cracks, or I don't want to go too specific, but several diseases with the eye. And AI can process all these images compared to the image of your own eye and provide a 99% accurate diagnosis on what is going on with you. That will help the physician to make the right recommendation. Maybe resting is not what you need. Maybe it's specific drops or specific rest that you need to have to get this eye healed. So imagine how other medical conditions can be treated if you have a 99 early diagnosis to help you define what's the best treatment that will speed up the healing process, that will make patients work back to productivity, to their own life again. So technology is about helping us, consumers, patients, to be on our best health and shape possible. And again, patient-centric is one of the keys. And, I'm very passionate about that.
Yeah, AJ, even hearing, our conversation with 3Cloud, everything was so relatable. And the story about your eye and that giant machine is completely relatable as well to me. And the fact that you can do that on your own personal device is amazing. So, I'm fascinated and I can't wait to continue learning more. As we are learning, of course, there are always going to be some roadblocks. Are there any roadblocks that you've seen that, could slow down the deployments in this space?
Yes, of course there are. I tend to put them on different clusters. So the first one is usually financial constraints, because implementing AI solutions can be expensive and require significant investment in technology, in infrastructure and training. And also, to 3Cloud's point, integration issues. Sometimes integrating AI system with existing healthcare infrastructures, like electronic health record, that's another really great example, can be complex and time consuming. So cost will be probably first. Second, this is an extremely regulated industry. So one of Microsoft's critical focus is on data privacy and security. So healthcare data is extremely sensitive. You know that ensuring its privacy and security is a must, and all the system must comply with regulations like HIPAA, and can complicate and delay some of the deployment. Third and last one, the more human side of these, which will be the lack of skilled workforce or the cultural resistance to change, which eventually will be shifting. And finally, which it is common to all other industries, are the ethical concerns. You know that the use of AI raises ethical questions, such as specific for the healthcare, to be biased for the AI algorithms and implications on how AI-driven decision makers are on patient care. So I think these three are the main blockers, or I don't want to say blockers, but obstacles that can be solved with vision and with innovation in mind.
And we love that we share that, not because, first of all, we want to be real. And second, it helps anybody that's thinking about innovating in this space be aware of these roadblocks from the beginning and make sure they can address them appropriately. Speaking of that, I hope that throughout the last 30 minutes, our listeners have getting a lot of inspiration from Dan and you, AJ. So given that you're the expert in the space and have been in this space for so long, what advice and resources do we have at Microsoft for anyone that's looking to improve or launch their practice in healthcare?
Well, addressing these roadblocks or obstacles requires a concentrated effort from all the stakeholders, including healthcare providers, technology developers, regulators, and policymakers. So again, not being blocked, but try to overpass all these obstacles. I would recommend to focus on lowering the barriers to entry for AI adoption in healthcare through this responsible AI, skilling, governments, and industry research. I think that by establishing a powerful coalition with strategic providers and decision makers from government, the top education partners will solve these specific healthcare issues. I will recommend to exhaust all the available assets we are providing with transformative AI use cases as examples to inspire you and embrace the business envisioning process. Another example of proven success is how AI can transform the electronic health records, as I mentioned, making healthcare more efficient, effective, and patient-centered. AI can analyze vast of amounts of data, as we mentioned, and provide insight that help healthcare providers make better clinical decisions. This will lead into more accurate diagnosis, personalized treatment plans, and improved patient outcomes. I would recommend to focus on lowering the barriers to entry, the AI adoption in healthcare throughout responsible AI, skilling, governance, and industry research. We have all sorts of tools, webinars, assets, and all sorts of resources available for you, so you can get into our partner hub, and you can learn how you can make your healthcare journey much more efficient with AI, and how you can transform and be more efficient, effective, and patient-centered with your own solutions and our resources.
Perfect. And we will definitely make those resources and links available to our viewers. And just thank you so much, AJ, for your knowledge and sharing your expertise. As I said, this is just such a fascinating topic, and I really can't wait to see, where we head in the future with AI and this industry. So thank you again.
Likewise, thank you for inviting me to this great series of podcasts. I really enjoyed the time with you today. So looking forward for more healthier life and saving more lives together.
Absolutely. And for our listener, this wraps our third industry that we've covered. Up next, I'll give you a sneak peek. It's retail. So in a couple of weeks, we'll release that episode. Stay subscribed, and please leave your comments on our YouTube channel and, of course, in our LinkedIn community. We look forward to staying tuned with you. We hope today's conversations have ignited fresh perspectives and inspired you to take new opportunities in this changing landscape of AI.
Stay tuned for more insights and stories on No Slides Attached. Be sure to listen in and follow us at noslidesattached.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.